And recording, and we're live here on Facebook. Thank you, viewers, if you're watching. This is going to be exciting. We're just after the holidays, which is still a great time to get in here and talk about business. Why not? People are living their passions, and I think that's what it's all about over the holidays, celebrating what we love most, including the people, including our passion projects. And today, I have the honor of interviewing Brad Cote, who's a super successful business owner in the Toronto area. And Brad and I have just been getting to know one another over the last month. And it's really a privilege to interview people like Brad because as I build my network on social media, there's such a wide variety of people, and people just starting off in business, people a couple of years in, and then there's people that are 5 or 10 years down the line and they've got a thriving, successful business and all their different operations in place. And how Brad and I met was actually at a mastermind type of meeting that I was hosting online. And Brad just came to the table with so much value and so much knowledge around building a business, around marketing. And he's lived it. He's had the experiences of going through all these different motions of putting the business into practice and reaching out with business development and helping his clients scale and manage their businesses in really great ways in order to have the lifestyle that they're really going for. And that's ultimately, I think, why entrepreneurs get into business to begin with, is it's part of a lifestyle choice that we want. And even though there can be a lot of work at the beginning, it's how we look down the line 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now, where we really see the possibility for living a magnificent life. So specifically, Brad's area of specialties is in helping health clinics manage and scale their practice, which is great. He's the founder of Link Integrated Health, and he's got a couple of different businesses that he's involved in. Today, we're going to be speaking predominantly on the business development side and the marketing side, but we're also going to hear a little bit about the specifics of Brad's organizations and exactly what he does. Now, in terms of Brad's deep knowledge of marketing and business development, that's definitely going to be an area we want to hone in on and dissect a little bit. And ultimately, we're going to hear about Brad's story and his journey into becoming a successful business owner. So I'm super excited about this, Brad. I know it's a couple days after Christmas, so I super appreciate you being here, man. And let's just kick it off with the first question being, what's your favorite quote?
Sure. So thanks for having me. I think it'll be good to be able to share some insights and provide some value to everyone who's watching this or listening to this in the future. One quote that really stands out to me in regards to kind of the business is by Jay Abraham. And he says, "An amazing thing, the human brain, capable of understanding incredibly complex and intricate concepts, yet at times unable to recognize the obvious and simple." And I think that really speaks to a lot of people, especially entrepreneurs, where we tend to overthink and overcomplicate solutions. But yet when you get into these mastermind or you're going to courses or you're meeting other people who are at higher levels, they're able to connect the dots and see things that you aren't, just because you're kind of overwhelmed or in the industry itself. So you sometimes walk past the most obvious things.
Yeah, no, that's great. I love that. And I mean, Einstein has a similar quote about making things, don't make them overly complex, but don't make them overly simple. And I think that balance point is the critical key in getting your business off the ground in an efficient way. I've gone through a lot of trial and error over 7 years, kind of figuring things out. So really looking forward to kind of diving into what that quote means to you as far as how it's applied to your business. And as we kind of transition in that question, just tell us all about your business, Brad.
Sure. So I've been in the health and fitness industry for about 12, 13 years now, in various capacities. So I've always been a bit more entrepreneurial. I started out into personal training, got my therapy licenses so I could do treatments as well. And I've always really been trying to get the best results for clients and, obviously kind of running your own business to some degree in terms of marketing, getting your own clientele, retaining them, sales, and so on. And eventually I worked in other capacities, consulting for other businesses. I've opened my own health practice and gym, where I've employed, 10 plus 15 people in those businesses, and they're all doing over seven figures. And now I'm focusing more into the coaching aspect and working a lot with health practice owners who really want to double their revenues, decrease their clinical hours, and have control over their lives. So I'm focusing a lot more into helping other health practice owners, just because we can get a way bigger impact. So for me, if I'm opening other facilities, I can only see so many clients. But if I'm working with 100 different health practice owners, they all have, a couple hundred patients each. It's going to be way bigger of an impact to be able to help those people. And really, what I started to find was health practice owners. People get into kind of what we talked about. They get into the entrepreneurial lifestyle to make a change, to have some, big impact, to further reach and do things kind of their way. But often they don't have the skills as developed as they should for marketing, sales, the operations, retention, and hiring, and so on. There's all these other intricacies of figuring it out. And I've spent a lot of time and money and hours and whatnot over the past couple of years to really figure out the systems that are the easiest and to implement and will give you the most amount of impact right away. So that's what I'm working on the most right now.
Yeah, that's awesome, Brad. And so you definitely scratched the surface there of why you made the transition in order to have the impact. You can help more people this way in terms of the coaching and consulting side. Is there anything in terms of when you start working with a business owner that is kind of universal? Like, do a lot of these clinics have a full picture of how the business should function, or are they more kind of naive and unaware of where all the pieces fit together?
Well, it kind of depends on where these, where the business owner is in terms of their business and what their backgrounds are. I'd say it varies. And what really makes me, uniquely different is we actually do a more in-depth intake process. So I've really adopted this concept even when I was seeing clients from training as a personal trainer to therapy as a therapist. Really looking at the individualization, and do the same thing with the business and saying, there's basically an intake process, and I would ask questions, where's your revenue? What problems are you having? Or you feel you're having the most with? How many people do you have as employees? What systems are documented? There's basically an entire intake process that really helps us understand where the person is right away and what they need to be focusing on. And I think that's a really big key, because often people say, I need more leads, or, I need to hire more people. Well, if you don't have documentation of your systems, or you don't really know what you're hiring these people for, you're setting yourself up for potential failure. And the same thing with leads. If you don't have a way to nurture those leads, or convert them, you retain them, and so on, you're kind of, plugging the hole of the boat, and, there's this bigger hole across the away. So you're kind of always trying to get out of the fire. So we really focus on trying to figure out where the person is first, and then saying, this is going to be the best option for you to start.
That's awesome. That's great. So it's a holistic approach, obviously looking at the full picture. And I mean, that obviously makes sense as a consultant, having that map. You come in there, and is it kind of a universal map? Like, you can take this system and apply it to every clinic, or are there subtle nuances in each clinic that require some flexibility in adjusting?
It's like an overall map, but depending on where the person is, and some of the challenges that they are facing, we might take a more specific or individualized approach. For example, if the person's not getting enough leads, there may be a lot of reasons why they don't have enough leads. So we would take a look and say, well, is it because, why does someone need more leads in the first place? Is it because they're losing too many because they can't retain clients? Is it because they don't have any marketing system that is replicatable and automatic? Can they not convert the leads? So we really want to figure out where that is. And that's kind of the intricacy of where we'd be focusing on. So you have a roadmap, and it's sort of like, is this step in place? Yes. Okay. Is it working? Is it replicatable? So we go through each one and say, okay, well, we need to focus on these. So it's the way we really work with people is it's a roadmap and each section they've got to, pass go to, so to speak. So, if they're on a second phase of our questions and they're trying to get to stage 5, but they're skipping past them, that's why people are having these problems. Because if they don't have, for example, like we talked about before, a clear message of what problem they solve and who they solve it for, it's going to be very challenging to have a successful marketing campaign, because you're really just taking a shot in the dark and hoping you hit something. So if that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, no, totally. And I love the precision of doing things in the correct order. And I think that's a great point. Certainly something that I've experienced in business is kind of trying to jump ahead, not necessarily because I'm not trying to take a shortcut, just not knowing that there's some other steps in between, step 1 and step 5, there's 3 other steps there. So I think it's great that you can come in and having, with the experience, obviously, and having the kind of intuitive observation of where those specific ingredients are missing. I think that's super essential. And I can definitely attest to what you're saying in terms of the marketing message, because even after our conversation last time in the meeting, that really allowed me to make some tweaks to what I was doing and get some real laser focused efforts into my marketing strategy. So number one, like, thank you on a personal level for that. But I mean, it's so clear that you got to do, in a sequenced order, or, sometimes you can figure it out, but you go through a lot more trial and error. So I love the fact that ultimately, it sounds like you're just saving people a lot of time and frustration with what you do.
Yeah. And I mean, I've made that mistake for years when I was first starting out, of being too broad and, training and treating everyone. And, you have certain clients that you really enjoy working with, and there's others that you just hate. And you wake up in the morning and you're just like, wow, I just can't deal with these people. Not that they're necessarily bad people. You just don't, have the passion or to deal with a specific problem. And I think that that's really a key thing that people worry about, is that if I narrow down too much and I go too niche, then I'm going to end up, not having enough clients. And it's just quite the opposite.
Yeah, and I want to unpack that a little bit more when we get into the methodology question. But before that, just to go a little broad for people, what's the biggest vision you have for your business, your community, and the planet?
So the big thing for me has always been being able to make a bigger impact in changing the lives of people. So when I first got into the health-based industry, it was a lot about working with my clients one-on-one, so that I could get them the best results. And what I started to learn was I could only see so many people. I could have maybe 15, 20 clients at that time. So I knew that in order to make a bigger impact, and as well as, ideally people are getting better, so their needs change over time, and you're not just selling them and doing the same thing over and over again. I knew I needed to grow a team. So I just essentially kept evolving to, growing a team of people who believed in the same concepts of me. Started to develop my own training and treatment systems that we put together in order to optimize the results that clients can get. Eventually opening a gym and now therapy clinics, where we're able to, take those concepts and be able to apply them to help the most amount of people. So my vision was always be able to make a big impact. And I really had the realization in the past year of I can make a bigger impact by helping other people's businesses. So I always kind of assumed other people, not that I'm the most well-versed business person ever. I've always been working on it. And I always sort of assumed people were at least at the same level I was, or some degree. And I started to realize just by being in different groups and whatnot, that it's not necessarily the case. So I felt like if I started working with some of these individuals, which I did, they can now make a bigger impact. So they're able to make more money. They're able to get the right clients. They're able to make a bigger difference and get better results. And ultimately, they're more passionate. They have a better lifestyle themselves. Obviously, they have more time, more income, and so on to facilitate their goals. So my goal really now is be able to. I'm looking at being able to help 10,000 health practice owners. Essentially double their revenues and decrease their clinical hours and really have control over their businesses, so that they can not have to be in the trenches, so to speak, and they can actually develop their passion and their dream and their vision, and help obviously the staff as well as the patients and clients that they see. So really wanting to build that community. We've got a group on Facebook now. It's about 500 people for health practice owners, physiotherapy, chiropractic, massage, and so on. And really the goal with that is to not only optimize their businesses, but interlink in terms of professions. So if you've got a chiropractor, can they be working with a physiotherapist, or can they be working with a personal trainer in order to get their clients or patients the best results? And this is one thing I've always really believed in. And a friend of mine, a colleague of mine, Dr. Ken Kanakin, has a whole community built around that called Swiss. He's in Mississauga, and that's really what my passion's been as well, is that work together as a team, optimize people's business so that we can get the best impact and make the biggest change. From a planet standpoint, I think it's really like maximizing and kind of where can we make the biggest impacts. I haven't really thought super far ahead in that way, but I would really think you could start doing some more philanthropy based things around the world and be able to help fill in the gaps in healthcare and so on.
Yeah, well, I mean, the ultimate message that I got from a broad perspective there is you're living your passion, and you want to enable other business owners in the physiotherapy space and health clinic space to live their passion and really bring to fruition the reason why they got into business for themselves to begin with. So I think that is magnificent, and probably one of the highest callings that we can have as entrepreneurs. I love the idea of 10,000 clinic owners, helping them double the revenue. And typically, what's the time frame when they can go from like where they are revenue wise to doubling the revenue? Is it a year, 2 years? What's the timeline?
It sort of depends on where they are in their business, kind of those phases. So we walk people through, like, there's 4 different phases that the business owners are in, and depending on where they are kind of in that spectrum, some people see results. You'll get the people who are a little more developed and a little more experienced. They might start getting results, fairly quickly. We've had people get results. We've had clinic owners where they do a simple reactivation campaign, and in 2 weeks they'll make $10,000-$15,000 and end up getting 8 to 10 clients back in. And then there's other people who are a little more green. They're kind of just starting out. Those people, they might need 6 months or so to kind of really get the systems in place, because they're doing a lot of the work themselves. So it really varies. I mean, I generally say you've got around a 3-month. I work with a lot of people on 3-month based 90-day program where we implement systems to automate their marketing, and then we have a monthly coaching based program where we get together and we have a Zoom call like this, and we would talk about. Generally, I have like one presentation that I would go over. It might be a retention based module, and then we have kind of open Q&A and so on. So it sort of depends. I'd say somewhere between 90 to kind of 12 months, 90 days to 12 months for most people to get to the stages where they're major increases in revenue, doubling their rates and hiring the key hires and stuff, so that they can have more freedom and not have to be in the workplace doing everything.
Oh, that's great, Brad. Wow, that's awesome, man. And then as far as like 10,000 clinics, is that predominantly in Canada and the US? Do you go beyond North America at all? How does that look? So
right now I'm working primarily in North America. I'm assuming we'll probably expand outside at one point in a couple of years' time, once we kind of get a larger group in the North American market. I think there is some like regulations and certain things that are outside that I'm not entirely familiar with, so I'll need to expand and kind of network with people outside, for Europe, for example, and so on. Yeah, that's awesome. That's really cool. So just getting back to the methodology a bit here, and unpacking it maybe for the next few minutes, I really love what you said about niching, and that a lot of people have the fear that if they niche, they're going to somehow, eliminate themselves from the marketplace, or, they're just not going to be able to serve as many people or generate as much revenue, whatever. There's a lot of fears around that, and I've gone through that myself. So can you speak a little bit more to the idea of niching, and particularly in the realm of your industry, and how that looks for people? Sure. And yeah, so the big thing that I always start with everyone on is really knowing uh, who your target audience and client is. And it's important in multiple ways. So there's two aspects. It's one, not only is the person affluent enough, is it a big enough problem that they want to solve and they can afford it and invest in it, but also are you skilled enough and passionate enough about dealing with. I had given the example before. I used to train people and do a lot of therapy. I've worked with NFL and NHL based players, and I just started to not like it as much. It was very, it was fun at the time, but after a while you're like, okay, well my goals are making a bigger impact and growing a team are somewhat limited by me being able to do this. So, am I skilled enough at doing, working with the NFL players, for example? Yes, but I'm not as passionate about doing it. Can they afford it? Yes, and so on. But I'm not passionate. So at one point, I've got to be able to shift. And I think that's a really big factor for people to think about is, one, who do I enjoy working with the most? Who obviously has a big enough problem that I can solve and I'm skilled enough to solve, and they can afford my services and so on. So I walk people through. I give them worksheet, and I'll send you the link if whoever wants to go through it after this, to really just sit down and think about who it is that I really should be working with, and from that skill to passion standpoint.
Yeah. Wow, that's great. I love that, and that's it seems kind of simple in some regards, and it seems almost obvious in some regards, particularly the way you articulate it, but it eludes entrepreneurs. And one of the things is they kind of get caught up in the overwhelm of owning a business. And particularly if there's employees involved in, multiple points of operations, it's easy to overlook the simple things. Yet having that passion and excitement and enthusiasm for what we're doing every day, from my standpoint, that's the foundation. If you want to have a great life, just make sure every activity you do is filled with excitement and enthusiasm in a way that suits you. And the moment you start losing that, the other aspects of the business don't really matter from my perspective. So would you say that as far as getting the business owners in alignment with that passion and niching into who they really serve best, is that where a lot of coaching comes into play, or what typically does that process look like, helping them make that shift?
Yeah. So I'll share with you that document, and basically what it does is it asks you some deeper questions. So I think there's 12 or 13 questions that will, walk you through who you should be working with. And then, you've got to have that passion. And the other thing with niching is you've got to know the clients and that prospect better than they know themselves. And I think this is a crucial stage that people miss. And, if you're helping a specific person, it's one thing to say, I help men and women over 40 lose 30 pounds in 90 days without fad diets and, endless cardio and so on. So it's one thing to say that, but do you understand, obviously we're going to assume that you're skilled enough to do it, but do you understand why they want that problem solved? Why do they want to lose 30 pounds in 90 days in the first place? And, that's kind of the next steps, is really understanding it's a quadrant. I draw it out as a quadrant and say, what are their fears right now? What is their frustrations that they have right now? And, listing those out and trying to get into their head to understand, well, what is someone frustrated with that 30 pounds for? And where do they want to be? So what are some goals that they have? Well, I want to lose 30 pounds so that I could, be able to play hockey again without my knees hurting, and, have more energy to play with my kids when I get home, and so on. So it's always taking it to the next step and going deeper in terms of understanding why someone wants to have that. And then once you understand what they want, going into what is the implication if they don't achieve it. So if that person, is frustrated every day because they don't have enough energy and their back hurts when they go play hockey, and that's their goal, is to overcome that. Well, if they don't, what happens? Well, they might need to go get surgery one day. They might need to take medication. they might not be able to enjoy life as much because they can't stay active, and that their social life falls apart. So their ultimate desires and outcomes that they want might be, I want to not be able to be 30 pounds lighter and not have to worry about my back. I can just lace up my skates. I can go play, and I'm 20 years younger, so to speak. I don't have to worry about playing with my kids. I've got endless amounts of energy. I'm super focused at work, and I can really enjoy my life and have that quality of life back. So that's just kind of like a brief example to how deep you really need to understand those clients in order to get that niching down, so you can ultimately provide the right message, the right offers, and the right marketing campaigns to get these people in and have the best ultimate results that they can.
That's great. Yeah, that's awesome, Brad. And just, I think it's important that we've had that level of depth in the conversation, because I remember being in commerce in university, and we never talked about this stuff. Like, we never talked about the core foundations, like what are the inner drivers and why we think what we think and why we do what we do to actually run the business. It's all the kind of technical stuff. So, we'll cap it off with that conversation, but just want to emphasize for everyone watching, like, from my vantage point, it certainly sounds like same for you, Brad, this is that foundational piece. Like, if you're missing it, you're not going to enjoy the business, and there's going to be cracks in the foundation. Would you agree with that if you don't have that piece, Brad?
Yeah, it's going to cause you issues two ways. One, you're going to attract the wrong people, and you're going to have a bunch of clients that some of them you like, some of them maybe you don't like. And you're also going to have more challenges in terms of your marketing campaigns, retaining people, converting them, and so on, because you can't have a clear enough message about what it is that you do. So I think you'll lose passion just because you're starting to get frustrated at not, maybe being where you want to be in your business.
Yeah, totally great. All right. So as we wrap it up with a couple more questions here, next question, a fun question. The book Think and Grow Rich, obviously a foundational business book from the 1930s. So Brad, what's your favorite chapter in Think and Grow Rich, and why?
Yeah, it's a hard one to think about. And I think it's like, when you're kind of going through the principles, like one of them is about specialized knowledge, and really being able to, it kind of goes in with the niching, is like, where do you have that specialized knowledge that you both are skilled enough to be able to help a specific person or populations with, and also be able to be passionate about it. So I try to make sure that they sort of align for this and giving context. And I know, like, strategic coach Dan Sullivan goes on about your unique ability. And when you find that unique ability, now all of a sudden work starts to become easier. You start attracting the right people. You start being more passionate about what you're dealing with, getting better results, and everything kind of seems to click. So I think really optimizing that specialized knowledge, and constantly, relentlessly focusing on getting better results for that client at all costs, and doing your continued education is going to be absolutely crucial for you to be able to do that.
Yeah. And I like that last bit you said about getting the best results for your clients at all costs. And obviously you're not talking about, going bankrupt in order to serve the clients, but the idea here is that when you're aligned with the right person, it's easy to put in that 100% effort and give them all the resources they need to be successful. Is that kind of the general concept when you speak that way?
Yeah. And I mean, it's like if you are in business, I feel you have a fundamental obligation to your clients to get them the best results at all costs. Obviously, we're not we need to be in business to facilitate, but our consistent education on how can I get that client a little bit better. And even coming from the training world or therapy world, if I can go out and do a course and spend my weekend and dedicate my weekend on learning how to, get your shoulder to function better so that you can enjoy and enrich your life better by being able to play the sport or just maybe simply just getting a can of soup out of the cabinet. That's going to help you catapult your business huge. You got to realize it's like the clients don't need you. You need the clients realistically. And it's your due diligence and obligation that you should be focusing your entire time on, helping them. So the more that you know about why they have those problems and why they want to fix them, the easier it's going to be for you to communicate what it is that you do and what they need to do in order to get the results that they want, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, totally. No, I think it's great. And I mean, as you're talking, it's kind of, I think it parallels a lot like when you're raising kids, and the idea of like, you really have to be fully invested, in your child growing to be the best human being. Otherwise, that's just kind of the responsibility that comes along with parenting. Otherwise, you don't get the best human being. So it's kind of like the same thing with our clients is like, hey, obviously I got to wear my own oxygen mask first, but everything I've got after that, I've got to put into this because my entire lifeblood of my business is because the client is here. If the client wasn't here, I wouldn't have a business. So keeping that in perspective, I think is so essential. And some business owners, the further they get distance from the clients because they're not serving them every day. And kind of a final question before we wrap it up here, but do you find that they kind of get walled away from that and almost not forget, but lose sight of how important the clients are to the business?
I think sometimes it happens, and I can say it for myself too, when you've got, stressful times, whether that might be financially or, you're changing a methodology or something in the business itself or a system or something that needs to change. I think that it is possible to do that. And, going back to like Dan Sullivan, he talks a lot about having free days. And I think that that's absolutely crucial for you to be able to constantly focus. And for me, I always took time away, generally once a quarter, to sit back and look at my avatar and say, is the business where we are now serving the right types of people that we originally set out to help? And are we solving the problem? Are we delivering on what we should be doing? And taking more of that look. And I think that that's going to be a crucial aspect as you start to, remove yourself, so to speak, from the business. So the first step is you've got to get you need to have a crystal clear vision of where the business is going, what problems you solve, who you solve them for, and everyone else that you have needs to be on board with that. So anyone that you hire, they need to absolutely positively, especially if you're not going to be there, needs to carry that torch. And if they don't, you're going to have a diluted based business over periods of time. And you've got to make sure that, you don't have that. Don't let that happen, because that will start to decrease the brand equity. And ultimately you've got something that's kind of when you're around, it's buzzing, but as soon as you're gone, it kind of falls apart.
Yeah. Some critical points there. Definitely more to be explored, but we'll wrap it up from there just for the sake of time. Brad, that's extraordinary. Everything you just gave us. I know that's going to be super valuable to all the viewers. And just as a final note here, what are your current projects or offers that you're working on, and how can people get in touch with you?
Sure. So I've got the 90-day program where we help health practice owners essentially figure out who their target client is, install automations and scale their marketing-based system so that, at the end of 90 days, it's just a marketing machine. You don't have to do too much to it, so to speak. So they can get in contact with me. I'll send you my email. Anyone can just send me an email quick if they have any questions. And then what I'll do is I'll give you access to the first module of finding the clients, because that might be able to help your viewers out as well. And even though it's for clients or patients, it's still the same kind of fundamental understanding. It's just in the application of health practice. Wow,
that's awesome, Brad. Ton of value. That's why I invited you here from our first meeting. And I love your pure-heartedness. I love your holistic thinking. I love your genuine desire to help others. So it's an absolute privilege to have this conversation with you, and I appreciate your time today.
Yes, I appreciate having me on here. Hopefully I get some insight to some people.
Absolutely. So thanks everyone for watching, and we'll see you on the next Expert Talks, and enjoy the holidays. Bye for now.
Thanks.